You've probably seen it on bumper stickers or maybe on someone's car. You say, what would Jesus do? Probably would be thrown in jail today as a rebel, just as he was a rebel 2,000 some years ago, when there were these people that were believing that you could buy your way into heaven, when in fact what he pointed out is that heaven is right here and it's among the least of us. So today, as we look, our monthly theme is called Boldly Going Forward, Holy Boldness. And today I want to talk about going ever higher in our spiritual growth. Ever higher in our spiritual growth. So now one of the core tenets, and we've heard it this morning over and over, is there is a oneness. There's only one thing going on. There's one power. There's one presence, one perfect being of which we are a part and we're connected to. We don't have to go anywhere. When we invoke Spirit, it's already here. When we ask questions, go inside. There it is. We are already blessed with so much. And we learn at an early age that the entire universe and the world around us is constantly changing, constantly growing. We see proof of it if you've got a garden. You see these little seedlings come up and they grow into these amazing plants right before your eyes, it seems. I'm going to put up one of those cameras and watch it during the night, because I tell you, I have wisteria and I think it grows a foot during the night. We also learned in this relatively recent time, just 100 years ago, that the universe itself is expanding. There was a fellow named Hubble who looked through one of the largest telescopes of the day back in 1924, 100 years ago, and said, oh my gosh, look at these neighbor things he called island galaxies. And he says, they're rushing away from us at thousands and thousands of miles an hour. So the universe must be expanding. The very universe, the thread of where we live. So just as the world and the universe expands, we too are engaged in spiritual growth. We're not always aware of it. And good news, the good news, we don't have to go looking for it. Because we can tap into the power and the presence that we call omnipresent, that we call omnipotent, that we call omniscient. It's right here. It's all around us. This I am is right here where I am. You are. Good news, indeed. Now, to set the stage, let's look at these words from the early pages of the book, Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes. He said, we are surrounded by and immersed in an infinite good. We're surrounded by an infinite good. And how much of this infinite good is ours? All of it. Good news indeed. All of the goodness and the riches, the abundance of the universe is with us right now, and we get to use it. We don't have to wait. But if it's that full power of the infinite, then why doesn't it seem to be showing up every moment, every day, every breath? Well, that's what I want to talk about. I don't want to be having any of you satisfied with breadcrumbs when we've got the infinite to tap into. So here's the question, can you believe it? Can you feel it? Can you act upon it? Because if you can, already done, you're dismissed and you may go and have food. But if you're like me, I have to practice. So if we're met right where we are, then how does spiritual growth show up? Where does it show up? And how can we use it to have a better life? Well, I tell you, I notice there's a place where I still need some work. It's my leading edge. It's on the roadways here in Prescott. All right. So why is it I'm driving up Willow Creek, I usually am in the right-hand lane, I go a few miles over the speed limit. Don't tell anybody. Because if you go the speed limit, you're in real trouble. And up comes roaring behind me some large vehicle that just can't wait to get around me. But I can't get over any further. Or I'm puddling along and all this stream of cars is gone, and now the car in the coming in street decides to pull out. Well below the speed limit. When right behind me is a whole minute of nothingness. Wait, is it that important? So if you're like me, you might have a pet peeve. Anyone? If you do, you can take out at this point the prayer request card right in the back seat in front of you. Write it on the back, because we'll come back to this in just a little while. Play the game. So this leading edge opportunity I have causes me to ask, what has this person, either in the big truck behind me or in the little putt-putt car in front of me, what has them do what they do? Maybe the stress of life has caused them to be unaware of their own surroundings. Their mind so caught up in what they're doing, they have to be somewhere right now. And, of course, I'm in the way. So then I can say, oh, maybe they're just stuck because they're living in a world and they've lost control of their life, and the world is actually quite out of most of our control, and so they're stressed. They're concerned. So, oh, okay, that's one possibility. And so I go to the internet and I say, what's the statistics on traffic? Is it increasing or is it getting worse? And of course, because it's the internet, I can find verification for any question that I want answered. According to the Compassionate Justice, which is part of the Department of Justice, it is true that since COVID, traffic accidents, different things, running red lights, speeding, have increased measurably. So there you have it. My own informal life experience, the statistics from the government, it must be true. But does that change anything? No, it doesn't change anything, but it does allow me to think and say, oh, aren't I lucky? I haven't been in an accident. I can see, my brakes work. I am in charge of my experience of these poorly behaved drivers. And they, isolated inside of their machine, feel anonymous. They can do anything. They have 2 tons of metal roaring down the road. And you don't even know who they are. See ya. I'm in their rear view mirror, and I'll never know them, except the other day I took the license plate of this one person because I liked his car, I'll admit. It was a little orange Porsche, comes up, very cool, but I caught up at the light and took the picture. Playfair is his license plate. Playfare, like Wayfair, Playfair, not the belief of his driving. But I can take heed because in his book, Richard Living, by Ernest Holmes again, he says, life is not just something to endure, it is to be lived in joy, in fullness, without limit. Without limit. So we get to live in a fullness of life without limit. How are we going to do that? Because let's start. I'm in. I'm going to play this game. So take a breath if you don't think that you are living that life, but perhaps enduring or surviving or just getting by. Now, how can I be in this world and of this world and at the same time spiritually growing and taking every opportunity that I can to go, that's interesting. Where is the spiritual growth in this action, in this activity? How can I use it as fodder for my greater growth? You see, joy, different from momentary happiness, doesn't depend on getting that orange Porsche. Instead, joy is part of being in my skin and being able to see the world and the beauty of the world despite whatever circumstances there might be. Because the old joke, the person hanging on the limb on the side of a cliff, they're holding on and they're noticing that the tree is starting to give way. So peace and meditation is fine when everything is peaceful and meditating. When it's not quite that way, that's the spiritual work. That's when it happens. So now, for me, and probably for most people, my life revolves around relationships. Relationships with self, with my family, loved ones, friends, and of course, the strangers that are in the airport, in the waiting lines in the doctor's office, or at the grocery store. That's where we get to meet the world, and we get to see who I am. Because my actions, in the case of the driving, kind of led me into fear. Because why do I care if someone comes roaring up behind me? Because I'm concerned that they might just keep roaring right through me, right? And so my thought is, am I safe? Am I going to be able to do this? So that's a fearful thought. And so that puts me in the motion of enduring or just getting by in life. That's not good enough. So I found this quote from the late Margaret Wheatley. I don't know if you know her. Her seminal book on leadership and teams was more than a decade ago, but it's almost prescient for today. She said, "In our daily life, we encounter people who are angry, deceitful, intent only on satisfying their own needs. There is so much anger, distrust, greed, and pettiness that we are losing our capacity to work well together." Whoa. If we can't work well together, how can we get things done? Because I know that no single person can build a skyscraper. No single person can create an edifice or an idea and bring it to fruition. It takes a team. It takes leadership. And if we can't work together, then that means that every little interaction becomes strained. We're kind of looking over our shoulders. Now, this reminds me of a story you've probably heard. A newcomer comes to town, goes to the store and brings the groceries up and then says, "So, what are the people like in this town?" The shopkeeper, very wise, says, "Well, what were the people like in the town you came from?" And he answers, with a smile and says, "Well, they're really nice, and, I kind of miss it, but here I am now." And he says, "Oh, well, you'll probably find the people here about the same." A few days later, in comes somebody who's obviously in a rush. They bring up their stuff and they say, "So, what are people like here? I'm thinking about moving here." Well, once again, wisely says, "Well, what were the people like where you came from?" "Oh, not so great. That's part of why I'm leaving. They're gruff. They didn't trust each other. What about here?" He goes, "Oh, well, I think you'll find it more or less the same here." We bring with us so much of the world around us, and that's why in Science of Mind we say that change our thinking, change our life. So if we can change the way we think and view the world, then the world will be different. This story illustrates that maximum: we reap what we sow. And though less succinct, this modern parable really shows up. If you've ever met somebody new, fresh, and you don't know them, that first impression, how they interact, do they meet you in the eye? Do they come with a smile? Where is that human-to-human interaction? So Socrates was recorded to have said in his trial, and this was an existential trial, right? Because he was potentially going to be offed. He said, "But the unexamined life is not worth living." Now, from our science of mind perspective, this is part of the reason that we like to go to classes and stretch ourselves, learn new things, discover how we can view the world in a different way. Or we can take a training, become a practitioner, become a minister, and go deeply into the very questions that are important, that matter, that are far, far more interesting than just the flow of traffic on a Prescott street. So as we look out, we have provided tools here. We had one example this morning with our meditation. And I mentioned classes. And there is, of course, what we call the affirmative mind treatment or affirmative prayer, which allows us to seek to know, and in doing so, embody the truth of what we are seeking. So that if we see and we know the equivalent of what we're after, we can feel it. We can bring it into our experience, and this or something better shows up. Seems miraculous. So I recall during my own classes and trainings, over and over again, we would come and we would ask the question, well, what do you believe? Well, what do you think about this? And we would look at the big topics, like God, or money, death, relationship. These are the big topics, and you realize, I should say, that oftentimes one of the first things that might pop into my mind was from my early years. And I would be so indoctrinated that I could think, oh, I know what this means. And then I'd have to ask, where did that belief come from? Whose thought was that? That doesn't really resonate with what I know and believe today. But we did it over and over again. Why? Because as we uncover, we learn more and more and more about ourselves. And if we believe what we just saw and heard, knowing about ourselves allows us to be in the world in a way that is attractive, prosperous, abundant, joyful. It's all up to us. That's great news again. So one of the things that comes up, like the made-up story about how people are driving to spite me. They don't care about me. So that story is patently false. But what other things? What about if there's discomfort or disagreement or conflict? Heaven forbid. Somebody has a thought that's different than my own. Well, I have some experience in this because growing up, I was the peacemaker, the good boy. So I would notice when something was going a little bit sideways and attempt, in my childish brain way, to try and, okay, no, we don't have to fight. Let's calm down. But the bad news about that is a peacemaker can become a people pleaser. Now, what does that mean? Well, it can mean for me that I'll say yes to something, only to realize, where am I going to put that on my calendar? So I have to check with myself and say, is this really a true reflection of me, of my vision of what I want to do with my one and perfect life? So let's continue to think about this and take and allow Spirit and our growth to take us higher, boldly higher, to new areas. Maybe even beyond the horizon that we can currently see. The horizon of our comfort zone. I'm pretty good now. Yep, I'm pretty good, pretty spiritual. Kind of created a little plateau, and then along comes something to kick me to a higher level. So I should take that opportunity. So today, as the adult, if I get kind of nervous around some disagreement or a conflict, I can take the hand of my little peacemaker and say, hey, it's okay. We can both walk through this, and you know what? Your life does not depend on it. Because it feels like that when you're a little kid, right? You're completely dependent on the world around you. You don't have a way of earning money even by sorting nails or delivering newspapers. Not enough. So what I'm talking about is making every relationship and every interaction a spiritually aware affair. Now, Deepak Chopra stated something that I really like. The other person or thing or situation, conflict, whatever it is irrelevant. Say it again. The other thing which you think was the whole deal that was all about getting upset about, that is irrelevant. Everything depends upon you. How you relate to yourself determines how spiritually you are willing and able to relate to them, others, circumstance, the world. Once again, that is good news, right? Because then it says, I'm in charge. You just don't know it. I'm in charge of my universe. I am the center of my universe. I don't want to become a dictator in my universe, but I do want to ask for the joy and the love and the peace that is mine to have. So later in this article, he said, when our minds and our hearts are alone, aligned and open, then the universe pours abundance freely and easily. Let's take that one as the truth. Because we live in a bountiful universe of greatness that calls us higher, exposing us to the infinite to the degree that we are open to it. So let's open ourselves to greater spiritual growth and say, yes, I'm going to start that today. Let's take that into prayer. So I remember and recognize this power, this presence, this perfect universe that surrounds me, that is of me, that is in and through all that I am, all that I see, all that I hear. And as I hear with the ears of my heart, as I see with loving and open eyes, the universe must deliver a wonderful life. And I know this is true for me, so it must be true for you. And I know that this power, this spiritual growth, this ever higher vision of the world and the universe is ours for the taking. We're surrounded by it. We see it in the sunshine. We see it in the beautiful little dripply drops of yesterday's almost rain. There is no place where this power is not, so it must be surrounding us, giving us. And this infinite allows me to stretch my growth to horizons that I haven't even known. Each of us is on a path. Each of us is on our own journey. And we know and we trust that it is a good journey. So grateful for all the teachings that we have, grateful for the people here today and out surrounding us in the world. I just allow these words to go into the action of love and law, knowing it cannot come back void. And together we can anchor that by saying, and so it is.